Wonderful introduction, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interact with you today. To start with, I want to congratulate all the faculty, all the students for your achievements to date. We have a saying at Infosys that the price for achieving something, reaching a goal, is that you get to aim for the next higher goal. You get to compete even at greater level, so the expectation would go up. But I'm confident that with the right focus, with commitment, you will be able to achieve even higher goals. What I want to do over the next probably 25-30 minutes is to talk about technology, especially information technology. The reason for that is very simple. It's very rare that in our lifetime we will come across a technology that will fundamentally change human life. And we are going through one of those periods in the history of mankind. This is very similar to when agriculture was, quote unquote, invented or started. We as human beings started planting crops, started looking at agriculture. It allowed people who were till that period nomadic, they were not settling down in any one place, to settle down. It forced them to protect their crops, create an army, look at defense as well as offense. Nation states were born around these crops, and lots of changes happened. Again, during the Industrial Revolution, in the late 1700, 1800 period, with the invention of steam engine, etc., again a revolution happened. Every time this happens, typically there is also a change in the power equations amongst countries. And we're going through another such period of fundamental change right now. The industry is only about 65 years old. 1945 was when the first digital computer, not analog computer, was introduced. So it's about 65, 66 years old. And I'll talk about the rapid pace of change as I explained. So it's a very young industry, and the best thing is the next 30 years are going to be even more fruitful, exciting, important than the previous 30 years. We have seen lots of changes in the last 30 years, but the next 30 years are going to be even more important, even more exciting, and even more transformational. And this is where you have a role to play. So we are going to see great changes, amazing changes, and the question to ask each one of you, the question I would ask is, are you going to watch the technology pass by, or are you going to take charge and actively participate? You don't have to be a computer scientist to participate, because every aspect of our life, every industry is fundamentally changing. And I'll talk about few of these fundamental changes to illustrate how our preconceived notions of change, of how we do things, have to be rethought, have to be changed because of this fundamental technology. We were in some sense lucky because as was already mentioned by Professor Aloysius Edward, Infosys was started in 1981 when the PC, IBM introduced PC, personal computer. So we got to be there at the very early stage. I got introduced to computer science in 1977 in IIT Madras. And my first exposure was to the mainframe system that we had in IIT Madras. It was the second largest mainframe computer in the whole of Asia. So I was lucky to be there when that computer was installed. The computer was installed in 1973, but I was there very early on and got exposed to the computer, got to learn using that computer. And from 1981 onwards, 1983, network computing was introduced. Then in about 94, the browser was introduced, which actually popularized the use of internet. Till then, internet was available, but people did not use it. Ordinary people did not use it. Only professionals used it. The third generation wireless technology was introduced in 1991, which allowed us to use the mobile phone to access internet. And today, in a country like India, where you have about 750 million telephones, mobile phones, the primary way in which we access internet is through mobile phones. This is just how the technology changed and technology evolved. Now the implication of this is, before 1981 or before 1978, when Apple introduced its Apple II computer, computers were primarily used by professionals. In fact, if I look back to my first introduction to the computer, you enter the computer center, there's one room with about 30 punch card machines. So that's the primary mechanism you use to interact with the computer. You would punch cards on, so you would actually punch the program onto this card, a 80-column card. Then you would feed it into the computer and you would get an output as a printed report. So the first room was the punch card room, then there would be an operator room, and inside would be the mainframe computer. So we never actually got to touch the computer. At most we would touch the punch card machine, that's it. And that's not connected to the computer. The machine had a capacity of about 2 million bytes. 2 megabytes, that's it. It's the second largest mainframe computer in Asia, and it had a capacity of 2 million megabytes. 2 million bytes, that's it. Now if you fast forward to today, I can probably say with some confidence that many of you have a smartphone with you, and in most cases actually, the smartphone probably would have 1 gigabyte of memory or plus, if you have a Apple iPhone or something like 16 gigabytes of memory, which means that the phone that you have in your pocket is million times more powerful than the computer I started with. And what used to occupy one full floor of a building today is in our pockets. the power of technology has increased exponentially. And that's truly amazing actually. And the cost has come down also exponentially. Many of you would probably be aware of cloud technology. Now with cloud, using that same mobile phone, you have access to infinite computing and infinite storage on the cloud, on the internet. Practically at zero cost. That's amazing amount of technology that is available in the hands of the individual today. So that's just technology. Now what does it mean? So that's what I want to talk to you about, and what does it imply? What changes can we foresee today? So if you look at the move of the computer from the back office to the front office, from the hands of the professional to the individual, and into the pockets of the individual, we have actually democratized computing. It's a technology that is available to each one of us. Through that, we have the entire knowledge that's captured on the internet. It's assumed or estimated that that's the entire knowledge that we have. If you are able to digitize every single book, if you are able to digitize music, movies, videos, of course, papers, everything, technical papers, everything, that's all on the internet today, and you have access to that entire knowledge at your fingertips. You can communicate to anybody, anywhere in the world. And the cost of communication is also coming down dramatically. Within the next 24 months, we will have broadband connectivity to the mobile phones with 4G. And with that, of course, the immediate use of that will be to watch TV programs or movies on the mobile phone. But really, you have infinite capacity, almost infinite capacity from a communication perspective. You can connect to anybody, anywhere in the world. You can play video, you can actually have a video conference, you can interact with another individual, you can have group discussions, etc. using the mobile phone. So the convergence of computing, communication, and the last is automation. In 2006, it was postulated that it will take another at least 15 years for the computer to match a human being in interactions, in a quiz program or in a chess match. But within 3 years, actually, within 3-4 years, 2010, if I remember right, the computer beat 2 human beings who were considered the best in Jeopardy, which is a TV program where the quizmaster gives a question, gives an answer, and the computer has to give a question corresponding to that. It requires the computer to understand natural language. It requires the computer to understand the context in which the question is asked. It should have an amazing amount of knowledge because questions may be related to any subject anywhere in the world. And then formulate a question and respond. And if you did not know that it's a computer, you would have never imagined that the computer is playing this game. And it beat, as I said, the 2 best players in the world in a game that was broadcast. The IBM computer was called Watson. Similarly, the computer beat the best player in chess before that. So the ability to do tasks which human beings do is again an amazing capability of this technology. See, in the industrial era, we automated manual tasks. How we would sew, how we would stitch, how we would build stuff and things like that. Mostly tasks that require strength, stamina, manual tasks, repetitive tasks. Whereas in the digital era, in the information era, we are actually copying human brain. Tasks that require intelligence, tasks that require us to understand context, conversation. We need to have in-depth knowledge, content, etc. It's postulated that by 2032, in the next next 20 years actually, computers can do everything human beings can do. Everything that human beings can do. And that's an amazing change that is happening, and this power will be in the hands of every single individual. And think about that actually, every single individual having the power of computers in their hands. So let me give you a few examples of how things are changing because of this. So I'll start with education. Our traditional concept of education is that the teacher stands before you and teaches a classroom, probably 1/3, 1/4 the size. Typical classrooms will have 40, 50, maybe 80, 100 students. So two professors from Stanford announced a class on principles of artificial intelligence. Free class over the internet. And they said that anybody anywhere in the world can register for this class. So there's an online class, anybody anywhere in the world can register for this class. Normally in their class there will be 200 students. 160,000 students around the world registered for this class. 160,000 students. So you can actually think about what this technology has enabled. 25,000 students completed the class. Others would complete, because you can now take the class at your own pace, because the class is continuing. More importantly, simultaneously the class was translated into 40 different languages, so that students can learn in their own language. About 10% or a few students got A's, the highest grade. Surprisingly, not a single one of them were from Stanford. So people who were online, not in the physical class, actually were able to score even higher than the people who were in the physical class. They have of course now started a complete university, it's called Udacity. And they're offering now multiple courses online, most of it free, and students anywhere in the world can register and take these courses. So concept of university is changing, concept of physical location is changing, physical presence, need for physical presence. The concept of language, how we need to teach, everything is changing because of this. There's a site, many of you probably would have looked at it, called khanacademy.org. How many of you have seen this, khanacademy.org? Nobody? Okay. If you have brothers or sisters who are doing 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th in school, ask them to look at this site, khanacademy.org. It is set up by an Indian, but not in India, in the US. It is set up by one Salman Khan, not from Bollywood. He is a investment banker who resigned, and actually what happened was he had nephews and nieces who would ask him, pester him for tuition. You know, they would call him on telephone and ask him doubts, etc. And so he decided to use the internet to clarify those doubts. And then he found out that it's just not his nephews and nieces who are using the material that he would provide. Their friends are also using. There was a growing student population that was starting to use this. And so he said, this is an idea I need to take forward. So he resigned from his investment banking job and dedicated his time to set up an online tuition portal. This is an online tuition portal. Within a span of 2 years, he created 3,000 titles. In fact, I would tell you, if you have a doubt in history, in physics, in chemistry, in biology, statistics, any of these things, of course at the school level, you should visit that site because he explains all these things. Each of the videos are 7 minutes to 10 minutes, and there are 3,000 video titles. They're all free of cost. And today, about 3 million students around the world, lot of them from India, are using this site for learning. Now imagine the power of this. One individual, it's not an organization, it's just one individual, is teaching 3 million students around the world. So our concepts of what is normal will have to change. There are other examples also of similar nature. Normally we assume that bank will go to the residence of an individual if that person is rich. Right? Private banking services and things like that. Now in India we have a challenge of financial inclusion. Only about 20% of the population have bank accounts, have access to banking. So we have flipped this model on its head, and we said the way we can reach to the poorest of the poor is by having the bank visit them at their home. See, the challenge is that in our villages, smaller cities, etc., you don't have the volume of transaction, the amount of business you can do to justify setting up a bank. It's too expensive to set up a bank. So how do we then serve the poorest of the poor? So the industry came up with this model of what is called banking correspondent model. So you would go to a village, identify a respected person, a teacher, who has a full-time job, and say that if you can spend 4 hours a week, so each person will handle maybe 20-25 houses, and would visit these houses, spend maybe each house 10-15 minutes, so maybe in 4 hours he can cover all these houses. And that's it, you know. So he or she is equipped with a mobile phone with a small printer attached, and they would go there. It has a fingerprint scanner. They would do the banking transactions. So simple transactions like paying out money, taking deposits, printing out a statement, etc. And through this, and the person will get paid for, you know, total in a month. The person will spend 16 hours. That's about 2 days of work. You would get 2,000 rupees. And per household, the cost is maybe about 100 rupees. So you've come out with a low-cost model of taking banks to the poorest of the poor, taking banking to the poorest of the poor. And it's part of the rural banking initiative of Government of India. Again, leveraging technology. But the fundamental idea here is flipping the model, traditional model of how you would think about banking. Again, it required you to think outside the box, think differently, create new models, create new ways of doing things. Many of the people in India do not have credit cards. In Kenya, they had introduced something called M-Pesa, which is using the mobile phone itself as a credit card. In India, 750 million people have mobile phones. Approximately 50 million people have credit cards. So if you can convert the mobile phone into a credit card, then automatically 750 million people have credit facilities. They can use that to buy stuff, to send money from one person to another person. That's something which you can't do on a credit card, etc. And Airtel just introduced Airtel Money, if you have seen that. And I hope it takes off, because that again empowers the individual and helps them use credit facilities and things like that. Infosys had a role to play because the software is developed by Infosys. Another technology which is quite interesting is 3D printing. And in 3D printing, you can actually create an object that you can take a photograph of. So you can take a photograph of a car and print the car. You can take a photograph of a house and print a house. Now in the US, they are actually trying to build a house, a printed house. You can take a picture of a gun and print the gun. Some doctors have printed trachea and install that or put it into a human body. They are now experimenting with printed kidneys. Now this is again going to fundamentally change our concept of manufacturing. Our traditional thinking of manufacturing is that if you want to produce in large quantities, or if you want to produce at lower cost, you have to manufacture in large quantities. Now all you need is actually a printer, and then you can print anything you want. You can print a bottle, you can print a pen, the same printer actually can print. Of course, you need to feed in the raw materials actually. And then what happens to manufacturing? What happens to factories and things like that? What happens to intellectual property? Because you can copy anything, you can photograph. It's actually very beneficial from an environment perspective, because you recycle. You take a bottle, you crush it and feed it into the printer, and out comes a new bottle. Actually, so everything is recyclable if it really takes off. The 3D printers, which are primitive at this point, are being used to do some of these experiments, but the cost of these printers, the low-end printers, are just less than $1,000. So these are not esoteric technologies which are very, very expensive. And that's what is wonderful about what is happening today. The power is increasing exponentially, and the price is going down exponentially. And that is why I strongly believe that some of these technologies are going to fundamentally change what we do today. And that fundamental change in what we do is what we need to look at. When Apple introduced iTunes, they fundamentally changed the music industry. They killed the CD business, the DVD business, all that stuff. When CDs came out, the cassette tape industry was killed, the Walkman was killed. But then when it went digital, and now we use an iPod to listen to music, see videos, etc. It fundamentally changed the music industry. And such fundamental changes are happening in everything. Healthcare is the one industry which is going to be affected significantly in the future. So we will have sensors on our body connected to our mobile phone, which will look at our vital statistics. Already this is possible. If you look at what Nike provides for athletes, it monitors your heart rate, pulse rate, things like that. You can monitor anything, sugar levels. It can actually even predict when you're going to have a heart attack and things like that. And imagine that actually, your mobile phone automatically senses and tells the doctor the patient is going to die. The patient doesn't realize it actually. Or that you need to call an ambulance. The phone itself decides. One of the innovations which is coming out of Japan is all the refrigerators have televisions built in, etc. Or a display built in. So, depending on the foodstuff you have or ingredients you have, automatically a recipe pops up. So you don't even need to look inside the refrigerator what is inside. It knows, and then the recipe comes on the screen. So what do you need to prepare, etc. So I'm saying it is only left to our imagination and creative capability on what we can do and what we cannot do. It's a fundamental change that is happening, amazing change that is happening. Today about 2.5 billion people are connected on the internet. And we have seen the revolution that is brought out in terms of social media and social networking, Facebook, Twitter, etc. A movement towards democracy, a movement towards transparency is happening around the world, driven primarily by social media and social networking. In the next 10 years, 15 years, 60 to 100 billion devices and appliances are going to be connected onto the internet. These are the sensor devices I talked about. So imagine that actually, the light bulbs in this room, the speakers, the microphone, the security cameras, our cars, anything you can think of, anything that you can think of you want to track will have an embedded processor and a small amount of memory. So the shirt will tell you how many times it has been washed and how many times it has gone for dry cleaning, etc. Everything you can think of. It will be left to your imagination of what you want to do with that technology and what you would like to do. And that's where we are going actually. And that's why I said by 2032, we are going to, around that time, not precisely that year, but around that time, we're going to live in a world which is completely interconnected. The power of computing would have reached a level at which it can understand natural language. It can do a lot of thinking, a lot of stuff which we human beings only can do today. Computing will be practically at zero cost, storage will be at zero cost, and it will be ubiquitous. Communication will be again ubiquitous, and the level of automation that we can think of, including understanding our moods, emotions, and thoughts. Today, the sophisticated programs that are available can clearly detect whether we are lying or not. The computer can actually tell you whether you're lying or not. Programs are available. Far, far better than we human beings can do. So imagine a world where you cannot lie. And that's the fundamental change I'm talking about. And that's why I believe that the next 30 years are going to be even more interesting, more exciting, more opportunistic than ever before, or the last 30 years. Fortunately, in the information era, we in India are right in the center. We are part of this change that is happening. You can see all the companies that are represented here in Bangalore. It's like a who is who actually. All the multinationals are there, all the Indian companies are there, everybody is here in India, especially in Bangalore. It's literally a who is who actually, and lots of those technologies are being developed here in India. We have access to all this knowledge because we have access to internet. We are not behind. We are on par with anybody else in the world. We have a large population which demands support, services, solutions, who can be a consumer to what we develop today. In fact, large number of startups are happening in India, especially in the mobile phone area, mobility area, targeted towards the Indian consumer. And if you look at the apps that are available, anything that you can think of doing on a computer, there is an app for it. Anything you can think of, there is an app for it. And created by millions and millions of programmers around the world, and a lot of them in India. And so that's really the opportunity that I see in front of each one of you. You don't have to be a computer scientist. You don't have to know programming. All you need to do is understand a little bit of the technology, understand what the technology can do, and then imagine, create. Your creativity, your imagination is what is required. And if you're able to do that, you can change the world. And that is what is the opportunity in front of you. And that's why it's very exciting, very interesting. The next 30 years are going to be even better than the last 30 years. I wish you all the very best, and thank you very much.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Shrikant. We are actually very much honored to have you in our campus. And the question is that you did speak about technology and artificial intelligence coming up. So, is there any master of switch which will be available in the future if in case of a technological override? And will humans depend more on technology so that it makes us unable to live anymore?
It's actually a very interesting question. In fact, there is a debate going on in industry circles, in the social engineering side. And the question is, what happens to humans? What happens to work? What happens to jobs? And my answer to that is, whenever such transitions happen, you will see transitions in economies. I briefly touched upon that. Transitions to where jobs that would be created. Now, if you 50 years back, if you say that I'm a software engineer, the word software would have not been coined. Software engineer is not a job description. People would have been wondering, what does that mean? Today, every one of you would know what a software engineer is. New jobs were created, new job descriptions were created, new positions were created. So that's the first thing, Every change like this will create new opportunities, new jobs, new skill sets that are required, new capabilities that are required. And I'm confident in saying that we human beings will reinvent ourselves. The second part is, should you allow the machine to take control? Now the machine is actually our creation, it's a tool. And we should look at it always that way. In science fiction, of course, machine takes over the world and dominates human beings, and those scenarios are painted. But only if we let that happen. I think that's the key. It is a conscious decision that we need to make, I believe. But yes, those are the questions that need those are the questions that need to be debated. I did not touch upon biotechnology, genetics, etc. Bioengineering. We are able to now re-engineer that. And so, it will be indistinguishable actually. Man versus machine could be indistinguishable. You can have a programmed human being in the future because you can actually change the genetic code. So those are questions then that's outside the realm of science and goes into social engineering, philosophy, psychology and all that stuff. But yes, interesting question, and I don't exactly have an answer except saying that we human beings must control the machine. This is just a tool. That's my take on it. But then if we lose control, then it will be difficult to get back.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I'm Vinod, Department of MCA. Sir, if you are forming a regulatory framework for maintaining the data or maintaining the privacy of data on the cloud, so what rules or what legal aspects will be included in this?